You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis. Welcome to the show, Mish.
Hey, a pleasure to be back on.
And happy weekend.
A happy weekend to you, but not for Illinois. If you're looking at happenings here, my gosh, I keep wondering when it's all going to blow, and when Moody's, Fitch, and the S&P get around to downgrading not just Chicago, but the entire state. I don't know if you saw the report I just did, but Apocalypse, Illinois, IOUs are projected to hit $10.5 billion this year. And that's not the big problem. The big problem is $163 billion total accumulated liabilities, and I think those liabilities are way, way understated, actually.
Will it be bigger than Greece?
Well, that's a lot bigger than Greece. Here's the deal. Illinois is drowning in red ink. We don't have a budget. The Illinois lottery winners are being paid actually an IOU because the state doesn't have a budget. That's only a few $100 million or so problem. But and everyone wants more money. You know, the Chicago wants more money from the state. Specifically, Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, wants $500 million to shore up Chicago schools. The problem is the state has a huge budget problem on its own. It's drowning in red ink. IOUs are expected to hit $8.5 billion by year end, says Crane Chicago Business. But when you read the details, it says, well, that doesn't count IOUs for the universities or for unpaid lotto winners, which I presume have to be paid. My favorite comment of the day goes to someone who responded to Crane's article. It comes from Earl, who says, why not try spending money the state does not have? Yeah, indeed. Apocalypse, Illinois, which is a report that I just saw now that came out in January, totaled up all the stacks of IOUs, all the unfunded liabilities for healthcare costs, for interim borrowing, for pension obligation bonds, and came up with $159 billion. If we add in the recent $4 billion, it's up to $163 billion. I said, well, let's look at this on a household basis, and that just amounts to $34,152 per household. And where are households going to get that? And what about aging infrastructure? What about boomer demographics? What about Chicago schools? What about business flight, taxpayer flight, bond downgrades, higher borrowing costs, untenable pension plan assumptions, and a possibility of a significant market decline? I think it's safe to say that realistically the problem is more on the order of maybe 250 billion probably. And it's going to get a lot worse, actually, if we have a significant stock market decline, which I think we're going to have.
How much does Greece owe, and how does that compare to Illinois?
Well, Greece's problem is different. They're similar in one respect. Neither Illinois nor Greece can print money. It seems like the total liabilities for Greece, what did I determine them to be? Something on the order of 300 billion euros, is that right? But Greece is a country. We're comparing it to a state, and the problems are a lot different. But if we look at this on a per capita basis, I need to go do the numbers and see actually which one's worth. It's an interesting proposition.
Well, in Greece, I can still get a Greek salad. Are you going to come up with a special Illinois salad to make money?
I don't think so. We're still on to freedom fries here. Meanwhile, in China, the art of propaganda, the future apparently is so bright we need sunglasses to see. The and I had to laugh at this. Here's a statement. They actually have a propaganda department, and they said the focus of the month for September will be strengthening the economic propaganda. Well, I guess that's honesty, isn't it? Meanwhile, dare you say anything, bad about China's economic performance or about the stock market or about anything they don't want to hear, you're going to wind up in prison, and you're going to be paraded, and you're going to have to make a public apology. These are things that recently happened. And, of course, we've got cross-border deflation now. U.S. export prices have collapsed, and so, the dollar's been rising, and exports have been collapsing, but they're collapsing in China as well. So global trade is shrinking, and meanwhile, everyone's worried about normal CPI deflations, and they're trying to prevent them. And in fact, all of the instability that we have in the markets today is a direct result of central banks interfering, in the free markets, trying to stabilize the thing. They stabilize the things until they become extremely unstable, like they did in 2000, like they did in 2007. And I believe the volatility we're seeing recently is just the beginning of that.
What about China's statement, we no longer are going to spend money to try to prop up the equity market. Instead, we're going to focus our attention on going after the people who have perpetrated this collapse of the equity market. But wouldn't that be the Chinese government itself?
Yes, it would be, but they're not obviously going to do that. Instead, they're going to find scapegoats, and they've done that, and they've paraded them in front of, and they've made these people publish apologies for saying things like the stock market was overvalued. Meanwhile, the central bank last week announced that it was obvious that the stock market was in a bubble. So apparently the central bank can use the word bubble, but, heaven forbid any private citizen from saying that the stock market is in a bubble. Of course, the central bank is now saying, well, the valuations are now good, and people need to buy stocks, and the amusing thing to me is they've prevented lots of agencies from selling any stocks. Well, if you can't sell any stocks, then no one can buy them either, because in the equity markets, for every buyer there's a seller. So if you tell people that they can't sell stocks, well, then by definition there's no buyers. So it's amazing how these people don't even understand how markets actually work when they go around telling people that they cannot sell stocks. Absolutely amazing.
And how do you convince people to get into the Chinese stock market if you're going to go out and execute people they blame for it going down?
Well, that's an interesting point, of course, and we see it. I think I recently saw it. Every time China does something good, we see these reports that come out. How the yuan is going to replace the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency, but the problem is, China doesn't have a bond market big enough. It has no human rights. It's got appalling property rights. It's got an illiquid bond market. It has a peg currency that it can no longer control, and capital controls. Now, China has imposed a lot of capital controls because there's flight of people trying to get money out of China, and they can't. Yet, in spite of all of these things, people think the yuan will soon become the world's reserve currency. Of course, they've been saying this for at least a decade, and I've been taking the other side of that for equally as long a time, and I repeated that again today in a blog. I've heard these reserve currency stories soon for a decade, and, what a joke. No political freedoms, no economic freedoms. you can't say anything over there. No property rights, illiquid bond market. That tells the story. But this is what people believe.
We'll have more with Mish Shedlock right after this.
Unbelievable harmonies, spectacular performance. Bird Dog and the Vintage Electric Band, the ultimate tribute to the Everly Brothers and Simon and Garfunkel. In Oliver, October 2nd. In Kelowna, October 3rd. Buy online and save at ontourtickets.com. More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on The Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
Welcome back. We're speaking to Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis. Mish, one person suggested to me, what if China's economic crisis really snowballs and turns into an avalanche? We could see a migration crisis there that makes the thing happening in Europe look like a picnic.
I don't know if we get a lot of migration crisis from China other than in dollars, and that we're already seeing. In fact, you're seeing the effect right now in Vancouver. We're seeing it on the west coast of the United States. People that have accumulated fortunes in China and owning state-owned enterprises or whatever, all the corrupt politicians that got wealthy on the basis of graft, they want their money out. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a flight of capital. The humanitarian crisis in Europe is one of flights of based on the economy. People can point and say, we need to do something about Syria, and certainly the U.S. and Europe, by bombing and supporting the bombing of Assad in Syria, and our policies in Iraq all led to the rise of ISIS. But when you actually look at the passports of the people coming, they're not leaving for because they're persecuted. They're not leaving because because of political oppression by Assad. They are leaving because Europe is offering free benefits, and Germany and Sweden offer the most benefits. So people want these refugees want to go to the countries that are giving them the biggest handout. Germany's come out and said, well, we need to take more. Jean-Claude Juncker, the EC president, came out and said, we need to do more. We need to take more refugees. And one can actually sit back and say, well, why does Juncker, want more refugees? And the answer is, he's a socialist. He wants to give free money away, and because people vote that way. So you let in people, and you give them free goods and free services and free housing, and you don't even make them find a job or even speak the language. Well, yeah, you're going to get a lot of people coming in, and guess who they're going to vote for? They're going to vote for the guy that wants to give them more free stuff. So there's a political motivation that is very disingenuous here when these leaders, come out and say they want to do more. They're actually vote seeking, and they're not the ones that have to pay the price. It's the taxpayers that want to pay that are going to have to pay the price. And right now you got all this feel good stuff. Watch what happens as soon as crime goes up, or as soon as the people realize that that they're the ones, the taxpayers realize that they're the ones that have to put the bills for all of this because their taxes rise, and even more so, watch what happens if some of these people that are coming in are actually members of ISIS and start doing some very, very damaging things. And ISIS has actually made the claim that they are going to infiltrate Europe via these refugees. Now, one can wonder, if that's just a propaganda threat or if they're really doing it. But based off of other things that they've said and done, beheadings, burning people, throwing them off of cliffs, off buildings, off bridges, boiling them in oil, and everything else that ISIS has done, one ought to at least give a little bit of credibility to a claim when they say that they're going to infiltrate Europe and conduct these policies there. So a huge social demographic bubble is going to burst, over this, all because of the belief that these people are going to somehow be an economic benefit. I've heard it 2 or 3 times recently. A Financial Times writer just said, well, look at these. The Keynesian viewpoint is actually, if you give away money, that it pays for themselves. And they say, demographically speaking, we need younger people, and they're going to come in and they're going to get jobs, they're going to support the economy, blah, blah, blah. The actual reality of the matter is these people come in and they don't get a job for 9 years. And that's not all of them, of course, but it is the majority of them.
And they're saying there should be quotas in Europe on how many refugees they should accept. But how can countries like Greece and Spain accept refugees when they already have 25-30% unemployment?
That's youth unemployment is 50% in Greece, 50% in Spain. Actual unemployment in Spain is 22%. It's something like that in Greece as well. And Greece has to go through austerity. They've got to cut pensions. They've got to do a whole bunch of things demanded of the Troika from the latest rounds of negotiation they accepted. Greece has no money to house these people, to give them, food and shelter. And if Greece did give them food and shelter, they're giving shelter to economic refugees when they can't do the same for their own people. So this is a huge mess that's brewing, and it's going to spill over, and it's going to lead to more radicalism. We're going to see probably more people voting for Golden Dawn in Greece. We're probably going to see a similar thing from the National Front Party, Marine Le Pen's party in France, who are just tired of this. Unfortunately, all of these things tend to promote just more extremism, either on the left or the right, instead of what's really needed, which is the libertarian policy, which is to mind our own business. And that's the heart of this crisis in the first place. U.S. and Europe intervention in Syria and Iraq caused this crisis. It's because we meddled. And now supposedly the solution is more meddling in Syria, and we're accusing, of all things, of Russia destabilizing the region by actually trying to fight ISIS in Syria. Quite amazing.
Mish, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Pleasure to be on.
My guest has been Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis. You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.